Hi, Alan Burnett with YourWeddingHub.com. Welcome back. Today we're starting a pattern that we're going to follow at least for a little while and see how you like this. Once a week I'm going to tell the wedding story of the week. Now some of these I'm going back into my archives. I got to dig deep into my memory bank to pull some of these out, but I've just thought of great wedding stories, some funny ones, some sad ones, some that like the one today you're going to think, what a terrible story, but it ends up great. Years and years ago, when our families first started getting really pumped and involved in the wedding industry, our 3-year-old son, he was 3 at that time, he got a contract to be a ring boy for a company that brought couples over from Japan to get married in North America, have their honeymoon, and then they'd head back to Japan. And so Sammy, at the age of 3 until he was about 10 years old, was a contract ring boy. Did hundreds and hundreds of weddings. One of them, I was there with him that day, and the minister that was doing the wedding was not me, it was a Japanese minister, Reverend Yokoyama. And I'd sat through many of his ceremonies. Now, it was all done in Japanese, so I didn't understand a word that he was saying at that time. But I kind of followed his pattern because they were the same every time. And this one day, I had Sammy there, and he was up front standing by Reverend Yokoyama, and partway through the ceremony, the Reverend asked them to pray. There was photographers, videographers, and me, the one guest. And so we all bowed our heads. I didn't understand what he was praying, but I was doing the appropriate thing. Kind of bowed my head, but partway through the prayer, there was a pause, and I knew something was not quite right. So I kind of peeked out one eye to see what was happening. And Reverend Yokoyama was standing there, and it was sort of teetering, and I thought, he's getting ready to go over it. And I realized he's either passed out or he's having a heart attack. Something is not right. So I vaulted over the pews. The photographer realized the same thing, and the two of us got there just about the same time, just to catch him before he crashed to the ground. We laid him out on the altar, undid his tie, and started doing some chest compression. We didn't have a clue what we were doing, but we saw that done on 911. But anyway, we were doing what we could. Somebody called 911, and this chauffeur was playing the part of best man. And he had a heart problem himself, and so he had some nitro in the car. He ran out to the limousine to get his nitro, came back in, we gave the minister a shot of nitro. Can you imagine this poor Japanese couple? They've traveled halfway around the world for their wedding, their dream wedding, and the minister dies in the middle of the ceremony. What a terrible thing to have happen. As a rule, Japanese people tend to be a little bit superstitious, I guess you might say. I don't know what kind of a story that'd be going down. Our minister died in the middle of our ceremony. What a terrible thing to have to tell people. But anyway, Sammy was standing there and he's just watching this, and later he said to me, "Dad, how come Reverend Yokoyama gets to lie down in the middle of the ceremony and I have to stand up the whole time?" That's all he could figure. So the paramedics arrived. Reverend Yokoyama came back around and he lived. In fact, I think he's still living, if I'm not mistaken. Carried on doing many weddings after that. But they came to pick him up, but just as he was coming around, he said, I must finish. And I thought, what a trooper this guy is. He's not done the job. But they took him out on a stretcher, loaded him in the ambulance, they had to take him off to the hospital. And so the wedding wasn't complete. And so they said, Reverend Burnett, will you finish the wedding? And I said, well, do you want me to start right back at the beginning? Because it all was being videotaped. No, you just take over where he left off. And I thought, what kind of a wedding video is this going to make? Halfway through, you've got a Japanese minister, and all of a sudden this pale-faced Caucasian takes over. What kind of a wedding story is this going to make? But anyway, I put on the robe and I carried and finished on the wedding. Reverend Yokoyama, his only concern was, what was poor Sammy, the ring boy, couldn't think of the minister dying in the middle of the ceremony. But it turned out to be, I'll tell you, it was a memorable wedding, one that I will never forget. Thank you for joining me on YourWeddingHub.com. Come back, we're going to have a wedding story every week and then lots of helpful information. So check us out on Facebook, like us on Facebook, I hope. Follow us on Twitter, and keep coming back to YourWeddingHub.com. Thanks for joining me.